10 years ago, I had this list in my head of I never dreamt that I'd get to the end of that list. It's with very mixed feelings that I've decided to end my River Monsters journey.
On August 12, 2017, Jeremy Wade stood in front of a camera for the last time as host of River Monsters and spoke 5 words that broke the hearts of 42 million fans worldwide. "I have completed my mission." The smile on his face looked victorious, but behind his eyes something else flickered, something the cameras couldn't capture, something that would haunt him in the silence that followed. That night, after the crew packed up and the lights went dark, Jeremy Wade walked alone to his car, drove 3 hours to his empty house in the English countryside, and sat in the same chair he had sat in for 20 years. No wife waiting, no children calling, no voice asking how his day went. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of a question he had been running from his entire life. Was it worth it? Jeremy Wade is not just a fisherman. He is a ghost among rivers, a man who traded the warmth of human connection for the cold embrace of the world's deadliest waters. For more than 40 years, he walked alone through jungles that swallow men whole, battled creatures that can stop a human heart with a single strike, and survived diseases that left him convulsing on dirt floors thousands of miles from help. From the blood-dark depths of the Congo to the electric currents of the Amazon, he rose not through privilege or luck, but through a hunger so relentless it consumed everything in its path, including love, including family, including the ordinary warmth most men take for granted. But behind the legend of the man who caught monsters lies a story far more devastating. A lifetime of deliberate loneliness, broken connections that can never be repaired, and the silent, suffocating ache of watching the entire world move forward while he remained frozen in motion, chasing shadows in water that could never hold him back. The cameras showed the world a hero. The truth reveals a man who sacrificed everything for fish, and now at 69 sits alone in a house that echoes with nothing but his own footsteps. Before we begin, if you've ever wondered what it truly costs to chase the impossible, leave a like as a tribute to the man who paid that price in full. And stayed subscribed because by the end of this story, you'll understand why some victories are more tragic than any defeat. It's heartbreaking to realize that the first wound came not from a river, but from a choice. A choice made so young it felt like destiny, but would echo through every empty room for the rest of his life. Jeremy John Wade was born on March 23, 1956 in Ipswich, Suffolk, a town where the River Orwell met the North Sea and the air always smelled of salt and soil. His father was a vicar, a man of God who had already learned what sacrifice meant. Years earlier, he had walked away from his family's Norfolk farming legacy to serve the church, reportedly disinherited by his own father for choosing faith over inheritance. The lesson was planted early in Jeremy's mind, though he didn't yet have words for it. Some callings demand everything. Some paths require you to burn every bridge behind you. And some men are born with a hunger that ordinary life can never satisfy. The family moved to Nayland, a quiet village in Suffolk where his father served as vicar of St. James's Church. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where time moved slowly, and where a boy could disappear for hours without anyone worrying. The River Stour flowed through the village like a dark vein, cold and endless, whispering secrets only certain souls could hear. And Jeremy Wade heard them. At 7 years old, his parents handed him a fishing rod, not out of passion or some grand plan to shape his future, but out of simple practicality. A way to keep sons out of the house on long summer afternoons. His first attempts were disasters. He got cold, he got wet, he caught nothing. I thought it was a complete waste of time, he would recall decades later, the memory still sharp. But something shifted when a schoolmate's grandfather, an old fly fisherman with gnarled hands and endless patience, showed him the rhythm hidden beneath the surface. The waiting. The silence. The electric moment when something invisible finally bites. From that day forward, the river owned him. While other boys chased footballs across muddy fields and gathered in loud packs outside corner shops, Jeremy Wade sat alone by the Stour, rod in hand, eyes fixed on the water. Waiting. Always waiting. By the time he turned 16, he had become the youngest member of the British Carp Study Group, an elite national organization for serious anglers. Not hobbyists, not weekend fishermen, but men who understood that fishing was not a pastime, it was an obsession. His parents didn't understand it, his classmates mocked it. But Jeremy didn't care. The river gave him something no person ever had. It gave him purpose. It gave him identity. And slowly, silently, it began to take everything else. He was a bright student, bright enough to earn a place at the University of Bristol to study zoology, the science of life, the architecture of ecosystems, the hidden mechanics of predators and prey. It should have been the perfect path, a way to merge his obsession with a respectable career. And for a while, it seemed like it might work. He graduated, earned a teaching qualification from the University of Kent, and by the late 1970s found himself standing in front of classrooms at Queen Elizabeth's Grammar School in Faversham, a biology teacher, steady income, pension plan, summers off. The kind of life his father would have been proud of. The kind of future that promised comfort, stability, security. But inside that classroom, with its chalkboards and fluorescent lights and the smell of old textbooks, Jeremy Wade was suffocating. The walls felt like a tomb. The routine felt like death. The slow, predictable march toward ordinary comfort was unbearable. Friends noticed he went gray early, not from age, from stress. The stress of trying to be something he wasn't. The stress of pretending that a normal life could ever be enough. One source later claimed he worked regular jobs for about 3 years before the breaking point arrived. 3 years of waking up with a knot in his chest. 3 years of looking in the mirror and seeing a stranger. 3 years of knowing that if he stayed, he would die inside long before his body gave out. And then, one day in 1982, Jeremy Wade made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He quit. Walked away from the steady paycheck, the pension, the respect of colleagues and family. He had just 200 pounds to his name. No plan, no safety net, no idea how he would survive. Just a one-way ticket to India on an Ariana Afghan DC-10 and a dream that felt more like madness. His destination was the Himalayas. His target, the legendary mahseer, a fish so powerful it could snap a man's line like thread. His chances of success, nearly zero. What followed was not a vacation or an adventure, it was a baptism. 3 months of sleeping on dirt floors, eating street food that left him sick for days, and traveling at such a basic level that every night felt like survival. The cold bit through his thin clothes, the altitude made his head pound, the loneliness was crushing. But despite the discomfort, despite the fear and the hunger and the exhaustion, there was something else. A real feeling of achievement, he would later recall. And immediately I started saving money to go somewhere else. That sentence revealed everything. He wasn't chasing fish. He was running from something, and the only way to keep running was to never, ever stop. That decision, that single choice to abandon security for rivers, became the architecture of a life built entirely on motion. To fund his expeditions, Jeremy worked every job that asked nothing of his heart. Motorcycle dispatch rider, weaving through London traffic with packages strapped to his back. Dishwasher in restaurant kitchens, hands raw from scalding water. Farm laborer, bending over crops until his back screamed. Cafe worker serving coffee to strangers whose names he never learned. He translated Portuguese for businesses, wrote articles for The Times and The Guardian, and even appeared as an extra in a 1986 Bollywood film called Ala Raka, standing in the background of scenes he would never watch. Every paycheck became fuel for the next journey. Every day of ordinary work was just a countdown to the next river. And every relationship that tried to take root was quietly, methodically, starved of attention until it withered and died. In 1992, he co-authored a book called Somewhere Down the Crazy River, documenting his hunt for the Goliath tigerfish in the war-torn rivers of the Congo. It became an angling classic with second-hand copies now selling for hundreds of pounds. But the book revealed something more haunting than any fish story. The way Jeremy Wade described rivers, as if they were alive. As if they had personalities, moods, secrets. As if they were the only companions he trusted. People came and went. Rivers remained. People demanded things, time, attention, compromise. Rivers only asked for patience, and patience Jeremy Wade had in endless supply. What he didn't have, what he had perhaps never learned, was how to let another human being in. It's heartbreaking how some men mistake solitude for freedom, how they confuse independence with invincibility, how they convince themselves that needing no one is the same as being strong. By the time Jeremy Wade reached his 40s, the pattern was set in stone. No wife, no children, no home that held his name for longer than a season. Just rivers and fish and the constant, relentless motion that kept the silence from catching up. His brother Martin would later confirm what everyone close to Jeremy already knew. Jeremy considers marriage a side issue. His childhood passion keeps him so focused on his career that everything else, including starting a family, seems unimportant to him. The words were meant to explain, but they only revealed how deep the wound had gone. Because Jeremy Wade wasn't incapable of love. He had simply chosen to love something that could never love him back. One story, unverified but whispered among those who knew him in his younger years, suggests that early in his career, Wade had decided to settle down once. That there was a woman who saw past the obsession, who believed she could build a life with him. Until she couldn't. The story goes that his girlfriend left him, calling him a loafer when he quit his teaching job to chase fish full-time. Whether the story is true or invented doesn't matter. The pattern speaks for itself. In interviews, when pressed about relationships, Jeremy's answers were always the same. Vague, deflective. "I'm not really good at balancing work and love lives," he admitted once, the understatement carrying the weight of decades of failed connections. He never married. He never had children. And as the years passed, the possibility slowly transformed from choice into fate. But then, in December 2002, something shifted. His first television show, Jungle Hooks, aired on Discovery Europe and became one of the most watched programs on the network. Suddenly, the world that had once ignored him was paying attention. Cameras followed him into the Amazon. Producers called with budgets and timelines, and for the first time, Jeremy Wade's obsession had a platform. During the filming of Jungle Hooks, his single-engine plane crashed into the Amazon rainforest. The aircraft went down hard, metal screaming, trees splintering, the world turning upside down in a chaos of sound and terror. When the wreckage finally stopped moving, Jeremy Wade crawled out, checked himself for broken bones, and looked around at the twisted remains of the plane that should have been his coffin. He survived. Barely. The crew walked away, shaken, some crying, others too stunned to speak. But Jeremy Wade didn't talk about fear. He didn't talk about God or luck or how close he'd come to dying. He just asked one question. Can we still film tomorrow? That moment revealed everything. Death wasn't his enemy. Stillness was. Because if he stopped moving, if he allowed himself even a single moment of pause, the silence would rush in. And in that silence lived all the voices he had been running from. The voice asking why he was alone. The voice asking what it had all been for. The voice whispering that no fish, no river, no adventure could ever fill the space where a family should be. Then came river monsters, and everything exploded. On April 5, 2009, Animal Planet premiered a show that would redefine Jeremy Wade's life and reshape an entire genre of television. River Monsters wasn't just about fishing, it was about fear. It was about the unknown. It was about a man walking into the darkest corners of the planet and dragging nightmares into the light. The first episode drew 1.3 million viewers, the best series premiere in Animal Planet history. The second episode jumped 39% to 1.866 million, setting a record that still stands. For 9 seasons, 162 episodes, and over a decade, Jeremy Wade became the face of fear and fascination. He traveled to 64 countries, investigated deaths blamed on mysterious river creatures, and caught fish that most people didn't believe existed. Goliath tigerfish with teeth like daggers. Arapaima that could grow to 10 feet and 300 pounds. giant freshwater stingray whose barbs could pierce bone. Goonch catfish rumored to feed on human corpses, but every episode demanded blood. Every season took something from him, and slowly, invisibly, the cost began to add up. In the Congo, while hunting the legendary Goliath tigerfish, Jeremy Wade contracted cerebral malaria, the most deadly form of the disease. It attacks the brain, causing seizures, hallucinations, and death in over 20% of cases. He was alone in a remote village, hours from any hospital when the fever hit. His temperature spiked to dangerous levels. His vision blurred, his body convulsed. The locals who found him thought he was dying, and maybe he was. But in his delirium, half-conscious and burning from the inside out, Jeremy Wade didn't call for help. He didn't pray, he observed. "I actually found contracting malaria in the Congo fascinating," he would later say, his voice eerily calm. Observing your body under attack from this microorganism is simultaneously fascinating and awful. Most men would call it terror. Jeremy called it research, as if even his own near death was just another data point. As if his life had become so intertwined with rivers and fish that he could no longer separate himself from the story he was telling. He survived cerebral malaria. And he went back. In the Amazon, an 80-pound arapaima headbutted him square in the sternum with the force of a sledgehammer. The impact bruised the muscle tissue around his heart. "I could still feel that after 6 weeks," he admitted in an interview, his voice carrying a quiet fear the cameras rarely captured. "I was very worried at the time that it might have damaged my heart permanently." His doctor later compared the injury to what car crash victims experience when they hit the steering wheel. Jeremy Wade kept filming. In Thailand, a giant freshwater stingray, one of the largest he had ever caught, thrashed violently as he tried to remove the hook. The barb on its tail, sharp as a spear and coated in toxic mucus, tore through his bicep muscle. The pain was instant and blinding, but he didn't let go. Not until the fish was safely released. Not until the cameras got the shot. A catfish in South America drove its spine deep into his hand, injecting a toxic slime that caused his entire arm to swell and throb for days. A piranha, thrashing on the line, embedded a hook through his finger. Instead of stopping to remove it, Jeremy used his own blood to attract more piranhas for the cameras. The director loved it, one crew member recalled. Jeremy just shrugged and said it made sense. His body became a map of violence. Each scar a sentence in a story no one else could read. Torn muscles, broken bones, infections that left him feverish and shaking. One injury after another layered so thick that pain became a permanent companion. The kind of pain that lives in your joints and wakes you up at 3 a.m. and reminds you that your body is not invincible. In 1984, long before river monsters made him famous, Jeremy Wade was detained by authorities in Southeast Asia while fishing the Mekong River. They were convinced he was a spy. "No one fishes the Mekong for fun," they told him, their voices sharp with suspicion. He spent hours in a small room answering the same questions over and over until they finally reluctantly let him go. He's been threatened at gunpoint in the Amazon by locals who thought he was poaching. He survived a boat sinking in rapids that should have drowned him. And once during a lightning storm in Suriname, a bolt struck so close to the crew that it hit the sound recordist directly. The man's hair and skin above his boots were singed. When asked to rate his headache afterward, he said, "Definitely a 10 out of 10. But he survived. And through it all, the production company's priority never wavered. After every emergency, every near-death experience, the first call back to headquarters followed the same script. Question 1, is everybody okay? Then, immediately afterward, question 2, did you film it? Each River Monsters episode required approximately 3 weeks of filming for just 3 or 4 actual fishing days. The rest was travel, waiting, negotiating with locals, sitting in stifling heat or freezing cold, wondering if the fish even existed. Production regularly occurred in locations with no emergency services, no hospitals, no help for hours or even days. The crew carried trauma packs with dressings, airway tubes, EpiPens. When handling electric eels, creatures capable of delivering 600 volts, enough to stop a human heart, Jeremy Wade brought an emergency defibrillator, just in case. But the worst part, the part that no camera ever captured, was the silence that followed. After every expedition, after every close call and every triumph, Jeremy Wade returned home. Not to a family waiting at the door, not to children running to hug him, not to a voice asking how it went or if he was okay. He returned to an empty house in the English countryside. The same chair, the same hum of appliances, the same weight of solitude that fame could never fill. It's heartbreaking when the world celebrates you for the very thing that hollows you out. By 2017, after 9 seasons and 162 episodes, after catching every creature on his impossibly ambitious bucket list, Jeremy Wade stood in front of the cameras one final time and announced that River Monsters was ending. Not because of ratings. The show was still Animal Planet's most watched program. Not because of money. Networks would have paid anything to keep it going. But because, in his words, 10 years ago, I had a list in my head, which seemed impossibly ambitious at the time. But everything has now been ticked off, and then some. He spoke like a man who had won, like a general surveying a conquered battlefield. But behind his eyes, if you looked closely, something else flickered. Exhaustion, relief, and perhaps, just perhaps, the dawning realization that he had spent a decade chasing monsters while the real tragedy was happening off-screen. While he was gone, his brother Martin built a family, got married, had children, created a home filled with noise and chaos and the ordinary, messy, beautiful moments that make a life worth living. Jeremy had rivers, and rivers, no matter how deep, cannot hold you when the nights grow cold. In 2013, science writer Kyle Hill published a scathing critique of river monsters in Scientific American. He accused the show of using inflammatory language like killer, man-eater, assassins, words that made mostly harmless animals feared or killed. Jeremy acknowledged the criticism but defended his approach. The show has a theme of fear, he admitted, but it's a positive message. Instead of hiding from the thing you fear or trying to destroy it, you work to understand it. The irony was devastating, because Jeremy Wade had spent his entire life understanding creatures. He could read the behavior of a Goliath tigerfish. He could predict the movements of a Mekong giant catfish. He could interpret the aggression patterns of an arapaima with scientific precision. But he never learned how to understand people. He never learned how to let someone in. And now, at 69, it was too late to start. Now, Jeremy Wade lives alone in the countryside near Bath, Somerset. A modest house, practical and plain, reflecting what one journalist called a no-nonsense, down-to-earth personality. His estimated net worth sits around $2 million, accumulated over decades of television work. During River Monsters, he reportedly earned around $250,000 annually. Enough to live comfortably, enough to travel, enough to prove that he had made it. But money doesn't speak. It doesn't laugh at your jokes or hold your hand when you're sick. It doesn't call to check in or send photos of grandchildren you'll never have. It just sits in an account, growing slowly, a number that means nothing when the house is silent and the hours stretch long and empty. He continues filming. Mighty Rivers premiered in 2018. Dark Waters followed in 2019. And as of September 2024, he's still hosting Mysteries of the Deep, investigating underwater phenomena and shipwrecks and legends that may or may not be real. The camera still loves him. The audience still tunes in. But when the director yells cut, when the crew packs up their equipment and flies home to families and spouses and lives that exist beyond the next shoot, Jeremy Wade drives back to Somerset alone. He does not use social media. His official website explicitly warns fans, Jeremy Wade does not post to any social media. Although he has a verified Instagram account, he does not have access to it, so cannot post, see messages, etc. Even in the digital age, even when connection is easier than it has ever been in human history, Jeremy Wade remains unreachable. A ghost. A legend. A man whose life is so public that millions know his face, yet so private that no one truly knows him at all. In a 2014 interview, he admitted something that revealed the cracks. "Yes, I am slowing down," he said, his voice carrying a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. "I don't know if I am physically capable of going to the Congo again. That was 10 years ago. He was 58 then. Now, at 69, the body that survived malaria and plane crashes and electric eels and 1,000 other dangers is simply, finally wearing out. The scars ache in the cold. The old injuries flare up without warning. The strength that once allowed him to haul 300-pound fish from river depths has diminished. He still works, still films. But the rivers have changed, shallower now, safer, closer to home, as if even the water knows that time is running out. In 2019, Jeremy Wade published a book called How to Think Like a Fish. It's part memoir, part philosophy, part fishing manual. But hidden in the pages are glimpses of a mind shaped by decades of isolation. He describes repeating certain actions, checking that doors are locked, making sure cookers are turned off, ensuring basins and toilet bowls are clean. Connected with these things were strange, repetitive rituals, he writes, the words clinical, detached, as if he's describing someone else. Whether this reflects obsessive-compulsive disorder or simply the hypervigilance of a man who has survived too many close calls, he never clarifies. But the passage feels like a confession, a rare moment where the mask slips and you see the machinery underneath. A man trying desperately to control a world that has never been controllable. Fishing is quite a good metaphor for life, he writes elsewhere in the book. You do your prep, you do your thinking, you put your bait out, and you wait, confident that you've done your groundwork. But a lot of life is luck. The philosophy carries weight. Because Jeremy Wade did everything right. He prepared, he traveled, he risked, he survived, he succeeded beyond his wildest childhood dreams. And still, luck denied him the one thing that preparation could not guarantee: connection. It's heartbreaking to imagine the quiet of his evenings now. No footsteps but his own echoing through empty hallways. No voice calling from another room asking what he wants for dinner. No grandchildren running through the house, leaving trails of toys and chaos. Just the faint hum of the English countryside, the ticking of a clock, the creak of floorboards, and the ghosts of rivers he can no longer chase. He once said in an interview that most people have forgotten, "A river without monsters is a scarier prospect because it means the water is unhealthy." The line was about conservation, about ecosystems, about the importance of apex predators, but listen to it again. A river without monsters is a scarier prospect. What about a life without love? What about a house without voices? What does that emptiness reveal about the soul of the man who chose it? Jeremy Wade is not a tragic figure because he failed. That would be easier to understand, easier to accept. He is tragic because he succeeded. He caught every fish on his bucket list. He built a legendary career that will be studied and celebrated long after he's gone. He became the absolute best in the world at what he did. And in doing so, he proved something that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid learning. That some victories are hollow. That you can conquer the entire globe and still lose yourself. That the greatest monsters are not lurking in rivers, but in the choices we make when we are young and foolish enough to believe we are invincible. River monsters made him rich. It made him famous. It gave him a legacy that will outlive him. But it also gave him something else. It gave him an excuse to keep moving, an excuse to avoid the harder questions, an excuse to never stop long enough to realize that the thing he was running from wasn't danger or poverty or failure. It was intimacy. It was vulnerability. It was the terrifying possibility that if he let someone truly see him, truly know him, they might not stay. And so he kept running, from river to river, from fish to fish, from country to country, always moving, always hunting, always alone. Until one day he looked up and realized that he had run out of rivers, out of monsters, out of excuses, and all that was left was the silence he had been fleeing from his entire life. Now, at 69, Jeremy Wade sits in that silence, and he has no choice but to listen, to hear the echoes of every choice he made, every relationship he let slip away, every moment he chose a river over a person, every time he said, "Not now, maybe later, maybe after this next trip," until later became never, and the people who might have loved him moved on to build lives without him. His brother Martin has a family, nephews and nieces who carry the Wade name into the future, holidays filled with laughter and noise and the beautiful chaos of children growing up. Jeremy has trophies, photographs, episodes that stream endlessly on cable networks around the world. Proof that he existed. Proof that he mattered. But proof of what exactly? That he was brave? That he was dedicated? That he was willing to sacrifice everything for a dream? Or proof that he was afraid? Afraid of being ordinary. Afraid of being still. Afraid of the vulnerability that comes with letting another human being see you. Not as a legend or a hero or the man who caught monsters, but simply as a man. Flawed. Fragile. Afraid. The saddest part is that Jeremy Wade will never answer that question honestly. Not in public, not in interviews, maybe not even to himself. Because to answer it would require confronting the one truth he has spent his entire life running from, that he made a choice, and that choice, however noble it seemed at the time, cost him everything that truly matters. So if Jeremy Wade's story has made you question what success really means, leave a like as a tribute to the man who learned too late that the greatest catch is not the one that fights the hardest, but the one you can hold in your arms when the cameras stop rolling and the world goes quiet. And if his life has taught you anything, let it be this: that no river, no matter how deep or dangerous or full of monsters, is worth drowning in alone. Because at the end of every adventure, after every triumph and every narrow escape, we all come home to the same question. Who is waiting for us? Who knows our name not because it's on a screen or in a book, but because they chose to learn it? Who holds our hand when we're scared? Who forgives us when we fail? Jeremy Wade has no answer to that question. And that, more than any plane crash or disease or monster, is the true tragedy. Not that he risked everything, but that when he finally stopped running, there was no one left to run back to.